My name is Annalise Larsen, and I was born on June 5th, 1994, in Chicago, Illinois, to my two loving parents, Jeff and Lori Larsen. This is my developmental history project. From birth until 3 years, I grew in my social, emotional, and language development. I was in the oral sensory stage of Erik Erikson's stages of identity, from birth to 1 year old. The conflict during this stage is trust versus mistrust. Immediately following my birth, I was the luckiest baby and was showered with unconditional love and care. I always had someone around me, whether it was my parents, two older siblings, or countless aunts, uncles, and cousins, excited to hold me, play with me, and provide for me. Therefore, I established a sense of trust early on in my life and knew I could trust others to fulfill my needs. I then moved into Erikson's muscular anal stage, defined by the conflict autonomy versus shame and doubt. During this stage, I most identified with autonomy, as I would explore my surroundings and develop interests of my own. Since I was a third child, my parents were more laid back and allowed me to get a little messy and explore the world. In terms of language acquisition, I started babbling at around 4 months. My language progressed a bit quicker than predicted, and at about 22 months, I would greet my parents in the morning with one-liner jokes. Before entering preschool, ages 0 to 2, I was in Piaget's cognitive sensory-motor stage. In this stage, babies learn about the world through their senses, and that's exactly what I did. My parents have told me countless stories of me getting into everything in sight, using my senses to learn about new objects. The start of preschool at age 3 is when I finally started identifying myself in Kohlberg's pre-conventional level of moral development. I attended a private preschool in which uniforms were a must. Although I wished every day I could wear that pink tutu with a rainbow striped shirt and polka dot socks, I understood that the uniform the school assigned would keep me out of trouble, which is exactly what I wanted. During this period in my life, I made decisions to avoid punishment. This method of motivation to avoid punishment stayed with me throughout majority of grammar school. In terms of identity formation, I entered Erikson's locomotor stage during preschool. At the beginning of this stage, I took initiative and became independent in decision-making. In preschool, I was the friend who was involved in various biddy ball sports and was perfectly fine doing activities on my own. This continued as I aged through this stage. However, towards the later part of the locomotor stage, I was blessed with a new baby sister. Now, instead of being excited for my independent activities, including sports and school, all I wanted to do is stay at home and be there for my sister. I'd feel guilty for leaving her at home while participating in extracurricular activities. However, my parents encouraged me to continue with my athletics, as they noticed my talent early on. I continued to stay active in sports, but still had that feeling of wanting to be home with my family. This caused me to stay in Erikson's locomotor stage until I was about 8 or 9 years old. During the time I was in the locomotor stage, I was also in Piaget's pre-operational stage. During this stage, I had a very hard time using reason and going through tasks solely in my head. For example, I had wanted a dog for the longest time, and my parents continued to say no. One day, I had the idea that if my parents were not going to buy me a dog, I would steal my neighbor's dog, in which I adored. My parents were less than thrilled with my actions and pointed out that my actions were very egocentric. This showed me in Kohlberg's second stage of a pre-conventional moral development, in which decisions were based off of what I wanted. Thankfully, this was a short-lived stage for me. Who knows what kind of trouble I could have gotten into. I learned early on in my schooling experience that I learn best when I am carrying out a physical activity and not just sitting in the classroom listening to a lecture. I love hands-on activities. Instead of learning about different types of trees in my first grade science class, I better retain the information by walking around the neighborhood with my dad and observing the trees. When I finally moved past Erikson's locomotor stage, I entered the latency stage of late childhood. I identified myself with the industry part of the industry versus inferiority conflict. Being the third child, at a young age I was surrounded by two older siblings who every day after school completed homework and emphasized the importance of school. My siblings' actions encouraged me to also perform well in school and develop motivation to keep learning and practicing. I was motivated by seeing results and being productive in this stage. However, this feeling was not just applied to school, but also sports, particularly basketball. During the ages 7 to 12, I put all my extra time outside of school to excelling in basketball. All the hard work paid off, and my team eventually won the national champions. I entered Piaget's concrete operational stage when I was about 7 years old. My interests in mathematics truly helped me move into this stage and develop logical thinking. Basic word problems in math help me understand that changing the outer form of something does not necessarily change its overall quantity. The jump from grammar school to high school pushed me into the formal operational stage in Piaget's stages of cognitive development. Classes such as chemistry and biology helped me change my thought processes to one that thinks through problems scientifically rather than trial and error. Equations filled my head ranging from a squared plus b squared equals c squared to equations to find the entropy of a chemical equation. Although I entered Erickson's adolescent stage at his predicted age of 12, I was stuck in this stage for quite some time. All the girls in my grade school went to the same neighborhood private all-girls high school. However, when it came time to deciding which high school I should go to, I chose the rival all-girls school, which was 45 minutes away from my house, for their exceptional basketball program. And while the basketball was everything I hoped for, the school was not. Although going into this new school, I had a strong sense of who I was, that quickly changed. I found myself lost and was surrounded in an environment in which I did not fit in, and lost sight of who I was. When I was finishing my sophomore year, I made the decision to transfer to my neighborhood private high school, Resurrection. I quickly found myself out of the identity crisis and role confusion. I found a group of friends who accepted me for who I was and made me a better person. I was surrounded by people who made me feel at home. During the majority of my high school, I went into and out of the stage of the moral development in which I based moral decisions on getting people to like me. When faced with a controversial issue, I would oftentimes resort to the side that would make me more favorable. While at the same time I was in Erickson's adolescent stage, I was also in his young adult stage. I began a serious relationship with a boy a year older than me towards the end of my freshman year in high school. During our 4-year relationship, I identified myself with the intimacy part of the intimacy versus isolation conflict. I loved having someone there for me and building such a strong friendship and relationship. However, when the relationship ended, I found myself in a period of isolation. I noticed I could not develop feelings for others as I had in previous relationships. I am now just starting to feel like my complete self and open up to others. My college experience thus far has been one in which I developed cognitively and socially while further establishing who I was as a person. I have met amazing people at college who have helped me grow in all aspects of my life. I found a great sense of independence as I tackled the struggle of going to school 3 hours away from home. While 3 hours may not seem like a lot to some, this was a big change for me. Although I will always be a homebody and be thankful for the time spent with my family, I value my college experience as a special time for me. I have learned so much about the development of individuals throughout this project. Whatever career I decide to pursue, I know I will be able to apply this knowledge to my interactions with people.